We've got taxes and bills that are rising faster than wages. So the question remains, what else do you think is needed over the next year or two so that everybody is enjoying higher living standards by the time of the next election?
Well, if I just...
Liam Burnett, please.
Prime Minister, thank you. You said at the top of the meeting that your vision for 3 years' time is that, in your words, I want people to feel better off. Just so we're absolutely clear, is the ambition that everybody in our society should feel better off in 3 years' time, including the poorest 40% of households?
Yes.
So you'll be aware of some quite troubling forecasts from, for example, the Joseph Rowntree Foundation that says that, in fact, having looked at all the measures that the government's announced on the table by the summer, the bottom 40% of households are not going to be better off in 3 years' time. They're actually going to be £1,200 a year worse off. So what do you think needs to change between now and the end of the Parliament so that everybody in our society is, in fact, enjoying higher living standards?
Well, we need to do a number of things. The first is we've got to get much better growth into our economy and create more wealth in the first place. And that's why we've put so much store on ensuring that we took necessary measures at the budget to deal with our inheritance. We then had a spending review which was targeted across the country. This question of making sure that if there is a thriving economy, it's a thriving economy in every part of the country and not just in some parts of the country. And it's why we've already in the spending review focused on things like the living wage, the national wage, and the minimum wage, and ensuring that wages are going up. They've gone up more in the last 10 months. They went up in the last 10 years. So that's the first part. The second part then is the poverty strategy that has to ensure that this is across the whole of society and every location, because in addition, as you all know, to the growth figures, we've had inequality variances across the country, place by place, and we have to have a laser focus on that, because whilst we want more wealth creation and the economy to thrive, and we do and we will, we can't have that as London and the South East and redistribution as a sort of one-word answer for the rest of the country. To my mind, that is fundamentally wrong.
Mr. Byrne.
The challenge that we've got, though, is that the Bank of England now forecasts that wage growth is going to slow down. Joseph Rowntree Foundation says that earnings for the bottom 40% are going to fall by £700 a year. The Office of Budget Responsibility says real household disposable income is going to fall to almost zero in a couple of years' time. Resolution Foundation says that the freeze on tax thresholds means that the real wage growth for the poorest will get obliterated. We've got council tax going up by 5%, food going up 4.5%, we've got energy bills up 10%, water bills up 26%, and Joseph Rowntree Foundation says that for those coming off fixed-term mortgages, they're going to be paying on average £1,400 a year extra by the end of this Parliament. Similarly, poor picture and outlook for renters. So we've got taxes and bills that are rising faster than wages. So the question remains, what else do you think is needed over the next year or two so that everybody is enjoying higher living standards by the time of the next election?
Well, if I just concentrate on two aspects of that. Firstly, the income side and then the cost side. On the income side, obviously, we have already pulled the lever of increasing minimum wages, which is on average of, I think, about £1,400 extra into everybody in effectively 3 million of the lowest paid, above inflation increases for standard rates of universal credit. And then on the other flip side, if you like, free childcare is coming on stream from this September across the board from 9 months through to school starting age. Free school meals are being rolled out, breakfast clubs are being rolled out, limits on what you have to pay on school uniforms, and warm homes discount is £150 per household. That's gone from 3 million to 6 million households for this winter. So I do think there are things that government has done and will continue to do. But in the end, the central focus has to be on creating more wealth and making sure that we have a growing and thriving economy. That's been the single biggest failure of the last 14 years, which is we haven't had an economy that has grown in any significant way.
These are all important steps forward, but having reviewed everything that you've just announced, the Resolution Foundation said that the poorest half of households, by the time of the next election, will still be £200 poorer than they were last year. So, the question remains, over and above what you've announced, what else do you think is needed in order that everybody in our society is enjoying high living standards in a couple of years' time?
I think we need a central poverty strategy, and we're putting that around the child poverty strategy, which we're rolling out in the autumn.
But you could cut people's taxes. I mean, if we taxed investment income in the way that we do work, if we tweaked up capital gains tax so that it was fairer, there would be enough money to deal with the fiscal pressures that we forecast and deliver a big, bold working class tax cut, just as they delivered in Australia. Surely that should be an idea that remains on the table going into the budget.
Well, I'm not going to be tempted to start speculating on what might or might not be in the budget. It's going to come in the autumn. We will get the forecasts. The Chancellor will set out her decisions according to that forecast, but I'm not going to be drawn into speculating on what that might be at this stage.
Well, Chair, the Prime Minister didn't rule that out, so I'll take that as a win and quit.
We're in for a long 6 months, because no Prime Minister or Chancellor ever says in advance what's going to be in the budget, and every day there'll be a story saying doesn't rule out.
Okay, we absolutely, Prime Minister, we're very aware of that. It's Debbie Abrahams, MP.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Prime Minister. Since you were last before us, Prime Minister, my committee published our interim findings on the Pathways to Work inquiry in May, where we expressed our considerable concerns about the imminent UC and PIP legislation, and particularly in terms of the changes in eligibility of these benefits, with the potential of pushing 250,000 disabled people into poverty. Now, I acknowledge the concessions the government made to the bill, but the fear and anxiety that this caused to disabled people currently in the system cannot be underestimated. I just wondered what you'd like to say to them now, and what you will be doing differently in the future.
Well, it's very important that they feel secure and supported, and that is at the heart of what we are doing in the changes we're making to welfare and related areas.
Now listen, the Joseph Rowntree Foundation says the poorest 40% will find themselves £2,200 worse off in 3 years' time. They asked the Prime Minister, what will happen to these people? The answer, we will create more growth. Come on, how many times have we heard this fairy tale? It was the same under Blair, it was the same under Brown. We'll grow, everyone will be better off. The result? London filled up with skyscrapers, the rest of the nation joined the bread queue. And still the same refrain, growth. But who is growing? The banks, the hedge funds, the City of London. Is the worker in Manchester growing? Number. Is the family in Leeds growing? I don't think so. As far as I'm concerned, this government isn't really concerned with growth, just looking good on the statistics sheet. Look, we've grown by 2%. So what? Rent has gone up 10%, energy 26%. Distorting the maths doesn't improve the standard of living, don't you agree? Write your comments. Am I the only one going mad? If you want to see these kinds of realities, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, let's get to the issue of salaries. The Prime Minister says salaries have increased more in the last 10 months than in the last 10 years. For God's sake, who believes that? I have a neighbour who is a nurse. She has 3 jobs, 3. Her salary may have increased on paper, but with taxes and rising bills, she ends up with the same amount, even less. This is a classic politician's trick. Raise it on paper, then take twice as much from the people's pockets. The funny thing is, he says this with such confidence on his face, as if they think deceiving the people is some kind of skill. To me, this is mocking the people. Really. So you say, we've increased the minimum wage for you, and then you increase council tax by 5%. What does the worker have left? Nothing. But they still talk about growth, wages, prosperity. I really wonder, do you feel these wage increases, or do you only see the bills like I do? They say to the Prime Minister, cut taxes. Let's get fair taxes from investments. The answer? No, sir. I won't get involved in the budget. I won't speculate. Classic. But the funny thing is, the man isn't explicitly closing the door. So, if you look, Starmer's team knows that in this country, the biggest burden is on the backs of workers and civil servants. They don't want to touch the wealthy investor. It's always the same story. Let's not scare the rich. Let's burden the poor. This has been the playbook of every government since Thatcher. But look at the historical irony. In the 70s, Labour boasted about being the party of the working class. Now they're leaving workers with extra taxes, rent hikes, and energy bills. But they never touch hedge fund managers, investors, or lobbying firms. That's why the public hates them, and rightly so. Don't you think the only thing that will change this picture is the public standing up? Leave your comments. And yes, if you think you need to hear these truths, subscribe, because here we're not talking about politicians' fairy tales, but the naked truth.